Well, good afternoon. A very warm welcome to this magnificent Lee Valley VeloPark, the site, of course, of the London 2012 Olympic Games for the UCI Hour Record attempt of Dame Sarah Storey. This is the wonderful images of this place that became what was known as the Gold Factory during London 2012 in terms of Great Britain's cycling. Huge crowds, a stunning atmosphere. And I'm sure this afternoon we're going to hear exactly the same as we see Dame Sarah Storey go for this record. The first woman to attempt the record since it was reset by the UCI. Well, there is Dame Sarah Storey. She's been warming up in the middle of the track. She arrived a couple of hours ago with her entourage, including, of course, her husband. And she's now getting herself set to go on the track. Well, before this attempt gets underway, then let's hear from the president of the UCI, Brian Cookson.
Brian, another hour record attempt. How are you and the UCI feeling today?
Well, we're looking forward to this with huge anticipation. This is the first attempt in the new era by a woman. Sarah Storey is a great Olympian and Paralympian, I should say, and a great rider, and I'm sure we're going to see an exciting hours of a wonderful extreme effort.
We've obviously had quite a few men's record attempts come and go. How much does it mean to cycling and to the UCI that this is a woman and also a Paralympian doing this record attempt?
Yeah, it means a lot to us, and we changed the rules to revitalise the hour record earlier last year, and we've seen, as you say, a spate of men going for it. This is the first woman to go for it, a great Paralympic athlete who's going for the able-bodied record, and I'm sure we're going to see something fantastic.
And of course, Sarah could get 3 records today. It's quite a historic occasion, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, and as I say, I'm really proud of what Sarah's achieved, and we are at UCI trying to promote and help develop women's cycling, and so this is an important part of that facility.
Thank you, Brian. Enjoy your day.
Well, there is Sarah then as she focuses on the job in hand. The crowd is huge. It's sold out in this arena this afternoon as they get ready to cheer her around the track. Brian Cookson, of course, saying it's the first woman to go for this hour record, revitalised. And as he mentioned, there's a possibility here that Sarah can take 3 records. Here's the conditions inside the velodrome then. The track 250 metres, of course. The bends are at 42 degrees. There are 6,000 seats in this velodrome, and the current temperature is a little bit low, but Sarah's actually asked for that, 24.8 degrees centigrade. She asked for it to be somewhere between 24 and 25 degrees. So Sarah specifically, because of her training, deciding that that's the temperature that she feels the best conditions. There's the current record then. That's what she's got to go for. 46.065 kilometres, which was the record set by Leontien van Moorsel in Mexico. And that is what Dame Sarah Storey now has to try and beat. Final preparations are done. Let's take a look back. This is Leontien van Moorsel, who set the record back on the 1st of October in 2003. She was on the track in Mexico City, deciding to go at altitude for the record. Spent a long time in preparation to try and set the mark for everyone else to try and beat. A very small crowd compared to the crowd that will see Dame Sarah Storey's attempt today, but an enthusiastic crowd nonetheless. Well, throughout, Leontien van Moorsel was her usual powerful self. Her classy pedalling style she always had. Looked stunning on a bike, very quick indeed, and was one of the trailblazers of women's cycling. Leontien van Moorsel then, at the end of the record, the standard was set, and everyone celebrated in the centre of the track as she made her way towards the end of the hour, because Van Moorsel managed to set the standard of 46.065 kilometres, and she was left on oxygen for a long time afterwards, the effort taking everything out of her. So here we are then as we get ready. Sarah Storey is making her way out towards the setup as she gets ready to go for this world hour record. She was invited to go for it by the meeting here, and now she's pedaling out to the track. Dame Sarah Storey training on the Derby velodrome actually just a few days ago, and we know that she has ridden for around about 35 minutes. Dame Sarah Storey, a Paralympian of course, born without a hand, but is a rider who has been able to ride at world level. Well, when we got to the velodrome earlier on, she arrived with her husband Barney Storey, and I think we're going to hear from Barney now about how the preparations have been.
So tell me just a bit about sort of how much training has she done in the run up to this, and what kind of training?
It's more been about trying to limit the access she has to like a real top end speed. It's a very kind of, not I'd say average, it's a real very kind of steady state effort, although be it very hard. So it's just making sure she trains those areas rather than training that real high speed that she's got.
What do you think her tactics will be today? You know, we've seen some people go hard early and then, you know, slow it down, or do you think she'll go for that constant?
It's going to be constant. There's not going to be any like heroics at the start. It's going to be a case of making if the record stayed on the same time lapse for the whole hour, that'd be brilliant. So yeah, there won't be like a really quick start, die off, and then try and hang on. But there, don't get me wrong, there will come a point where she's desperately hanging on.
The scene is set. Final drink for Sarah Storey. She's not allowed to drink again until the end of the hour, and that is what some of the men have struggled with. Matthias Brentler said all he wanted was a drink. Rowan Dennis said to me previously a week ago, all I wanted was a drink, and I could smell hot dogs in the arena, and I was desperately wanting to have some food. It's about 40 minutes when those sort of thoughts come into your head. But Sarah Storey, who took up the invitation of the Revolution meeting to come here to London and try and set the standard on the back of the request by the UCI president, Brian Cookson, to see whether a woman would try and break the world hour record. So Sarah, she's getting final bottles. You can see the nerves on her face. She said beforehand that she wants to give it a go. She wants to know how far she can ride in an hour. She says she's not afraid of failure. She's failed in front of a crowd before, and she doesn't see why it's not possible to beat this record, but it's a massive, massive ask. All she knows right now is in this arena in here in London, she's in front of a home crowd who will just cheer her the entire way. She's been preparing in Lanzarote. She's been training very, very hard. She's had track time in Derby. She has made sure that she has been on the boards of Manchester, and now she is here ready to get in the starting gate. Throughout the coverage, we're going to hear about her bike that she's riding, and we're going to hear from some of the people who've been involved in the preparations of Dame Sarah Storey's world hour record attempt. Those of you out there who are watching, you can tweet us today at UCI_track if you would like to, and also you can tweet at Ant McCrossan if you would like to ask me specific questions as Sarah goes for this record. Barney Storey with her husband, and Barney, a Paralympian gold medalist in his own right. He has been involved in all the preparations, getting things ready, They're such a close family. This is a very, very important moment. She's got a team that includes Magnus Backstead with her, looking at the information on the track, and here she comes as she is greeted by the crowd for this attempt on the world hour record of Leontien van Moorsel. 46.065 is the distance in 1 hour. 46.065 kilometres. As Storey now finalises her preparations. Now let's go through the palmares of Sarah Storey. We do know, of course, in the background that's getting announced by Hugh Porter, who will be guiding the arena crowd through the times and everything that she does. We'll hope to bring you all the data on the screen so you know exactly how she is doing throughout this ride in comparison to Leontien van Moorsel. But in terms of British cycling, Dame Sarah Storey is the most decorated Paralympian ever. She's won 11 gold medals, 8 silvers, 3 bronzes across 6 Paralympic Games. 6 disciplines in the pool as a swimmer and 6 disciplines on the bike. She's about now to go into something that very few male and female riders have ever attempted. I'm sure somewhere in that track centre this afternoon, Jack Bowbridge is there. He's racing here this afternoon, and I'm sure Jack might have, if he got a chance, just give a little bit of information as to how his attempt went. But Sarah Storey now is in the starting blocks, 60 minutes. How far can she actually go? Dame Sarah Storey underway. Of course, she has a special attachment on her handlebars because she has no hand there which to grip the bars, specially made by the rider who looks after Mark Cavendish. Rob Hales has specially created the handlebar that she has, and now she is into this ride. She is on a specially designed bike for this world hour record attempt. She's going to settle in now, and we will get up on the screen how she is doing as we can start to get an indication of her speed and how much the record will mean to Dame Sarah Storey this afternoon. Well, she's settling in, as you can see, to 18-second laps. Just to give you an idea, Jens Vogt in his world hour record attempt was at just over 17-second laps. So she just needs to get herself into a nice rhythm to settle down, and we're expecting, because of her slower start, that she will start to get up to the sort of schedule that she wants to ride to within around about the 10-kilometre point. It will take her a little bit of time until she gets herself fully up to speed. So our first mark that we're going to get in comparison is going to be around about the 5-kilometre point. Don't forget to use the hashtag this afternoon, hashtag UCI Hour Record. She's got to try and hug that black line as much as she possibly can. That is the key marker, the gauge line, the 250 metres around that track. Now the 5-kilometre point, we know that Leontien van Moorsel went through in a time that was 6 minutes 30.570. So we'll get that first indicator after the first few laps have gone. So 5 kilometres will take us to the 20-lap point, and that's when we'll start to see Sarah settle into a nice rhythm. 10 laps coming up shortly, which will be the 2.5-kilometre point. Remember, this track is 250 metres in total. And Sarah looks to be into a nice rhythm here, just settling herself down into her laps and trying to just make sure that she can just keep things nice and gentle. Coming up towards the 10-lap point, we'll see how she does. But Sarah is certainly there on 2:59.912 at the 10 laps point. And to give you an idea, that would mean that she is slightly up on the record of Leontien van Moorsel so far. Let's hope she doesn't go off too fast. There's always a danger of things going a little bit too much with the adrenaline that gets pumping very early on. But right now she is looking like she is pretty comfortable on that bike. She chose to ride two different disc wheels in here, and both aerodynamic carbon fibre. And now she's up into the rhythm, nice and aero. She's had to think about, as you can see, that attachment on the handlebars there on the left-hand side. She's got to make sure that that is aerodynamic. And I was sitting with Rob Hales at the World Track Championships just a week or so ago, and he showed me exactly the handlebar attachment and the amount of work and the amount of airflow tests that he'd done purely on that one little attachment to give Sarah Storey as much added assistance as he possibly could in terms of the airflow, because it's not easy to design an aero bar that will be able to slice through the air for her. Now, how many laps does Sarah have to do this afternoon? Well, earlier on I was sitting with Michael Hutchinson, who is going to try and join us later on in the commentary box. Michael Hutchinson's hour record was one that didn't work. He failed. He found it extremely tough at Manchester when he went for it. But Michael and I worked out that Sarah needs to complete 184.26 laps. 184.26 laps would give her the hour record of Leontien van Moorsel, set in October 2003. We're heading up to the 17 lap point. Our first indicator, as I said, is 20 laps. And the 10 kilometre point of Leontien van Moorsel was 12:59.270 was the 10 kilometre point. 5 kilometre point, 6:30.570. And I think so far Sarah Storey is going to be up on the schedule of Leontien van Moorsel. The sort of average lap times, to give you an idea, 19.542. And right now Sarah is riding there at 19.264, so she is ahead of the schedule of Van Moorsel right now as we head round to the first split point of 6:30.570. And Storey is going to hit it in 6:13.029. Storey is ahead of the record at the 5 kilometre point, but as we all know, there's an awful big distance left to go for Sarah Storey. Just 6 minutes of racing completed. She's settling down into her rhythm very nicely. She's keeping a lovely momentum, and there's our reference point at 6:30.570, the 5k reference. And the 5k reference point, Sarah's just on that record right now, and very, very close to it. So Sarah is right on the record right now. They'll get a better indication at 10 kilometres. And the 10-kilometre point will give us that good situation where we start to see the start level out. She's got into her rhythm, and we know how she's doing in terms of her schedule. She's only allowed one person on the track who will give her the updates on how she is doing as we come up to the 25 lap point. And in terms of her lap time, she's still there on the Van Moorsel record. Van Moorsel's sort of average lap times were around about 19.5 seconds. And I know that Sarah decided that she wanted to ride the opening situation nice and steady as she goes through lap 26 on her world hour record attempt. Sarah now has got 8 minutes and 54 seconds have already been covered. And as we come up towards lap number 28, she's covered 7 kilometres so far. Coming up to lap 29 now, as she crosses the line at 7,250 metres. And her lap there still lapping nicely at 19.3 second laps. So she is still going very, very well indeed, Dame Sarah Storey. And thanks to all of you for your questions that are coming in about this world hour record attempt. Has she gone off a little bit too quickly? I think we're only going to get that indication when we get up towards the 20-kilometre point, when we're sort of 80 laps of the track already completed. The temperature is great in here. The crowd can sense that there's the possibility of this world hour record going today. And in the centre of the track, Barney Storey just being interviewed right now. We'll bring you a few interviews throughout this attempt as she now goes towards the 10-minute mark. Not long now until we hit the first big marker at 40 laps. And 40 laps is where we will really start to see, is she settling down? Has she gone off too early? And from my records, Sarah Storey has to beat 12:59.270 for the 10-kilometre point. And the sort of average that she's lapping at is going well so far. The 19.3. She's pretty consistent all the time. She doesn't look to be in a situation where she is at any sort of pressure right now as we look closely at her. But now 5 laps to go, 4 laps to go now until we get to the first big marker of this world hour record. Sarah Storey going for this. Don't forget to use the hashtag UCI Hour Record if you want to ask questions or get involved in the discussion. But the crowd now are really starting to get behind her. She rides for the Perlazumi Sports Tours International team. It's her own team, and she's got her riders here with her in the centre of the track, the likes of Joanna Rousel and Katie Archibald, as we come up to lap number 38. 2 laps to go now until she hits the 40-kilometre point, and then we'll see how she is doing this afternoon. Coming up to 40 laps, and now 1 more lap to go, and Dame Sarah Storey will hit this first marker. She goes through lap 39 in 12:20.451, which looks pretty quick so far. But coming up now to the 10-kilometre point, let's see what the split is. Here we go now, and we'll see as she hits it. It's 39.807 for Sarah Storey. 19.3s are the laps. We'll get the reference point in a moment, but right now it looks like she is going very, very well indeed in terms of her laps. So Sarah Storey now lapping nicely. The indication on the track, there we go, she is inside the time of 12:59.270. She is slightly up on the record. So Dame Sarah Storey is going very, very well indeed. She has clocked the time of faster than Leontien van Moorsel so far. Right, let's just hear in the centre of the track from Connor Taylor, sports scientist, with Laura as to how things are going.
I'm here with Connor Taylor, a physiologist with the Great Britain paracycling team. Connor, this is an absolutely brutal event. What are the physiological demands on the body during the hour record?
Well, really, it's going to go through the whole physiological spectrum, really. Ultimately, it's about the muscle being able to extract oxygen that we breathe in, and for the heart to pump that oxygen-rich blood around the body. That's ultimately what it's going to take, and for the whole hour. So it's a very grueling event that goes through the whole physiological spectrum, really.
What effects will the air pressure here in the velodrome have on Sarah while she's riding?
Yeah, massive effects. Sometimes people don't appreciate how much air pressure and temperature can affect speed through the air. So, yeah, it's not overly fast conditions in here today. It's about just above 1,000 millibar, and it's around 25 degrees. So, yeah, we'd want it quicker, but it's the best of what we've got.
Thank you very much, Connor.
So hearing from Connor Taylor in the centre of the track right now. We know that Sarah Storey is up on the record, and we're going to now join in the commentary box Rob Hales, who has been involved in this attempt and can give us a little bit more indication of how he thinks things are going so far. Rob, good afternoon, a very warm welcome. Thoughts on the opening 10K?
Good afternoon, everybody. Anthony. The start, it's going extremely well at the moment. I think Sarah, she was hoping to be lapping around about 19.2s, 19.3s, which is where she's at the moment. But as Connor was saying there, the conditions aren't superb in here. It's quite warm, and it's around about 24, 25 degrees. Ideally, if we could get that up to 25, 26 degrees and have the pressure drop to around about 900 millibars. I think at the moment it's lingering around about just over 1,000. It has been dropping all day. So unfortunately for Sarah, she doesn't have the option to sit and wait. If this was a standalone hour record, then she would wait and possibly go later in the day or this evening and hope that the pressure comes down. But it's completely out of her hands. It's out of the hands of her team, a big team who she's got around her for this preparation coming into this event, and an awful lot at stake, an awful lot of pressure on the shoulders of Sarah, and she copes with it well. I mean, this is what she does. She revels with the pressure, and she really does like to put her neck on the line basically, and go out there. And at the moment, well, I think it's all looking good.
You think it's looking good? To me, I felt a little bit emotional at the start because we both know Sarah pretty well. She's been around the Great Britain scene for a long, long time. I don't remember seeing her ever this nervous before a start.
Well, like I say, the pressure on this event, the build-up to it, is quite incredible, and it's an interesting one from my point of view. The hour record it's nothing that I ever envisaged I would have attempted for various reasons. I wasn't good enough over an hour on my own, but also the pressure. You don't come out here and you don't just win on the day. If you could imagine every timed cycling event that happens during the year, if you could imagine that you only actually win if you win but you beat the world record, there wouldn't be many people taking part.
There wouldn't, would there?
And this is something quite special. I've been involved with, to my small extent, with the project since Christmas.
Tell me about what you've been involved in, because I've introduced the fact that you helped design the special attachment that she has to get started. But you kind of think, oh, she just needs you think that she's just got this one attachment, and you just put something on the bike and that's it.
It's an interesting one, as we can see here on, if we get a bit of a close-up shot on the left-hand side of her bar, on the right of our screen, on the inside of the track. She's got, it's basically a ring, it's like a donut, and that is where she puts her left hand in to get a purchase on the bars for starting. Now, obviously, the interesting perspective from my point of view is having to make this attachment to convert her standard outboard bar to this donut, this ring that sits just up and back from the normal position to allow for the length discrepancy in her left arm. But I mean, the pressure that goes on through that part of the bar is quite high. So I've had to obviously build it with some integrity. But when you actually look throughout the event, it's only actually used for anything between 0.5% and up to 1% of the total ride. So not only does it have to have that stability and integrity to withstand the massive amount of pressure that Sarah can put in the start, but it also has to be small enough and tucked away enough to be aerodynamic that it's not creating any more drag. So it was quite an interesting concept, and it took a little bit of trial and error.
How long did it take you to actually work out how this attachment would be and how aero would need to be?
I was having to think about it over Christmas and New Year, and then I actually went way overcomplicated to start with in the second week in January, and literally the final part was put together for the spare bike only a few days ago. It was actually when I came back from the World Championships in Paris. So I think very typically it's all lastminute.com, as we've seen with so many of the projects that the British riders have had. I mean, I know going into the London Games and even Beijing before, there were bits being shipped out when the team were already out on the velodrome getting ready to race.
But we never know that, do we?
It's all part of it.
It is. Look, she's settling down to kind of 19.5, 19.6 now. So does that mean she's starting to suffer a little bit?
It could very well be. She's just starting to settle in on the road. I mean, at this point now, this is where it really is going to start to bite. And I think the crowd really do need to get behind Sarah, especially when it comes into that last 20 minutes, last 15 minutes of the ride. It really does start to hurt. And you can break it down to a 4K pursuit. The first kilo is normally okay. Second kilo, it gets a little bit difficult. The third kilometre especially is where it really does start to bite, and you have to concentrate. It's all about concentration and that mental strength that Sarah can deliver through her body, through the pedals, into the back wheel, and then obviously to project her in a forward direction. And then once you get into the last few kilometres, that's where, if you've got anything left, it becomes just a little bit easier, I think, mentally. But physically, well, you just have to empty absolutely everything.
We know that she did a test a couple of weeks ago, and she was in a situation where she wanted to understand, you know, how many laps she could actually do at race pace. We know that she did do a good test of around about 35 minutes, and she was on the pace.
Yeah, so testing is all very well and good. I think the conditions, she's been using the new Derby velodrome, which isn't even open to the general public as of yet. And conditions haven't been absolutely superb there. But when you're under those conditions, you're just going out for 30-35 minutes, that's one thing. But then when it actually comes to it on the day here with the crowd and the expectation, that's where you really do have to be strong-minded. And I think of all the athletes that Great Britain has produced, well, this lady here, as we're seeing on the velodrome, there's Chris Ferber, her coach, just giving us some feedback there. So Dame Sarah is one of those athletes who really can deliver. She's done it on so many occasions.
She's certainly riding well, and in the centre of the track is Chris Ferber, isn't he? He's been helping her out, who was her coach during the Paralympics.
Yes, well, Chris was the coach for the Paralympic cycling for many years, and ironically, he has now gone to the sport where Sarah actually came from. She was a former swimmer. Chris Webber is now the para coach for the swimmers based in Manchester. But he obviously, he knows what he's doing out there, and Sarah wanted him because she obviously has the confidence in him, and this is the thing that you really do need in an event like this. You need the confidence in the team around you, because it's not just about the rider, the individual on the track, it's about all that's gone on in the previous few weeks. Ultimately now it's all down to Sarah, and once she's out on the bike there's absolutely very little that the coaches can do. Yeah,
well, let's see how Sarah continues. Rob, I'm going to ask you just to leave us for a moment while we welcome another guest into the commentary box. Sarah Storey continues around this track to complete the attempt on the world hour records. So we're having a look. Now you may be wondering on the screen about the laps. The left-hand data is the lap we are on now, which is lap number 75, and her last lap was 46.17 kilometres an hour, and her time was 19.571. So we're going to be joined now in the commentary box alongside me. He's been up most of the world hour record attempts that we've seen. He's been encouraged by the situation with riders going for the world hour record, and a very warm welcome this afternoon as we approach the time of she's on lap 77 now. She's completed 76, so we're heading towards the important point of 80 laps, which is the 20-kilometre split. But a very warm welcome to the president of the UCI, Brian Cookson. Brian, another hour record, but this time it's a woman rider. We've been talking, you and I have met at Matthias Brentler and also Jens Vogt, but what about this?
Yeah, this is fantastic, Anthony, and we're really pleased and excited to see Sarah taking up the gauntlet here, and throwing down the gauntlets and really going for it. So we want to do as much as we can to help women's cycling develop, and Sarah is an absolutely brilliant role model for that, and a great athlete and a Paralympian as well, of course.
So we're getting close. She is very close to this record. Right now she looks to be in that situation which is that it's really starting to hurt now. She's completed 78 laps. She's got to complete 80 in 25:59.650. So we're coming up towards that now. So how do you, you've known Sarah an awful long time. I don't know about you, but when she started, I felt a little bit of tinge of emotion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we've seen Sarah perform incredible feats here in the velodrome at the Paralympic Games. We've seen her perform on the road. And we're seeing that, she's just a little bit down.
So look at this as we see Dame Sarah Storey continuing around the track. She's only 0.779 of a second outside the record. She went through the 10-kilometre split just under the record at 0.023. So Brian, she's right on world hour record pace.
Yeah, absolutely, and pacing and riding to a schedule is absolutely key to this. That's what we've seen in the men's events, particularly the men's events that have failed, men's attempts I should say. And so for instance Jack Bobridge, who's racing here today, he went off far too fast. The last 20 minutes is absolutely the critical time.
So here we go, we're looking at Sarah. She continues around here. The average speed 46.130 for that last lap. And bearing in mind, Brian, the Leontien van Moorsel's record 46.065. So we know that Sarah is one of those riders who can ride a tempo. She can ride speed. She can hurt herself more than a lot of male and female athletes.
Yeah, she's a brilliant time trialist on the road as well as a good, very strong rider on the track, of course. And I've seen her both the time trials on the road and lone efforts in road races as well. And she's a very, very strong rider. Let's not forget that Leontien van Moorsel was a multiple world champion many times over on road and track, and a great, great rider. So Sarah's not got an easy target here. She's got a record that was set at altitude by a world-class athlete, proven many, many times. So she's got a really tough target here, but I think she's going to be up to it, and she's riding to the schedule, and that's exactly what she's got to do.
Lovely, Brian. Well, I think we might talk to you again towards the end of the attempt. A pleasure to welcome you here to London, to the Velodrome, and thank you for, I think, the rekindling of the hour record from everyone to everyone at the UCI, because it's been great to see these great athletes racing against the time.
Yeah, we're really, really pleased about the new impetus that we've given to the hour record. Thank you, Anthony. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Brian. Right, down in the centre of the track, we're going to say hello to Kieran Friend, who knows all about the bike that we are seeing Dame Sarah Storey ride on this afternoon.
I'm here with Kieran Friend, press officer for Madison. Kieran, how special is this bike she's riding, and how aerodynamic is it?
Oh, it's a really special bike, but it's also available to the consumer. So she's riding a Ridley Arena track, which is, again, like, it's available off the shelf, but we've worked hard with Ridley to make sure things like that are available to the consumer. It's one of the UCI stipulations that that's the case, and I mean, it's great that everyone can see her using it to set a world record, hopefully. We'll find out in half an hour, and it's also great that they can go into the shop and get that.
How has the bike been adapted for Sarah?
As most people might know, Sarah's a Paralympian and, well, a champion of it as well. She's also had the handlebars adapted so that she can set off properly, and normally it'd be a standard pro finishing kit from Shimano, but again, it's made a small change for Sarah so she can do her best today.
What does it mean to Madison to have Sarah doing this hour record attempt on one of your bikes?
It means the world for Madison. I think all of the suppliers, the laser helmets, the Perlazumi clothing, Ridley bikes, pro shoes, it shows that their stuff really can be used at the top of the sport, and it shows what you can do with that equipment. So again, it does mean the world to Madison, definitely.
Thank you very much, Kieran.
Well, here we are. She has completed 92 laps. The last lap was at 46.013 kilometres an hour. Sitting alongside me is a guy who previously has gone for the world hour record. Michael Hutchinson, a very warm welcome to the commentary box. A brief chance to talk to you. You've been analysing this record and all the male records, of course, that we've seen as well. What's your thoughts on the record so far? She's kind of right on it, isn't she? It's a knife edge.
Right on it. She's maybe even a little bit below it. She's riding a very, very controlled pace. I mean, she did, unlike a lot of the male riders we've seen doing this lately, she didn't push it too hard at the beginning. She was very, very precise and very controlled. She's pulled back a bit from it now, and maybe she's got a bit more to put into it later, because if there's anyone who's going to get that pace right, it is going to be Sarah.
Well, we're seeing here her last lap, 45.991 kilometres an hour. So it's certainly this point in the record, isn't it, a half an hour, where it really, really starts to hurt. And you know better than most how hard it hurts.
About 95% of the hour record is between here and the finish. Up to here has to have been pretty relaxed. I'll be honest, I'm actually pretty concerned, because her lap splits are drifting out around the 20-second mark. She needs to be riding kind of 19 and a half seconds, pretty much is bang on record pace. She's dropping about half a second a lap at the minute, and you start thinking about it, that's every 4 laps she's losing kind of 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And if she's doing that at the minute, she has to get that back at some point. So that means it's kind of, this is a high stakes part of the ride for her. If she gives away too much now, she's not going to get it back.
Right, okay. And we are seeing her average speed just dropping a little bit. In terms of holding the black line, you have to hold that line, don't you? And if you're wavering off it all the time, then things start to go wrong, because you're covering such a you're not holding down on the 250 line. It's not the fastest line of the track.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah's riding a very, very sweet line. She's an excellent track rider. She also has a teeny bit of an advantage over the men, and she's not going quite as fast in the curve, so the G-forces pushing her up the track are a bit less. The black line that she's riding on is the pursuit line. That's the shortest distance around the track, and it's where the track's measured, so clearly you want to be on it, but she's wavering off here and there, but it's actually, all things considered, it's pretty good.
Yeah, we talked, Rob was talking to us a minute ago about the pressure, and the pressure outside is not that low, is it? So it's not helping her.
It's about 1,006 millibars. Air pressure is just makes the air thicker, so it's like altitude, not altitude. So higher air pressure, she's struggling a bit. She's now, as we can see, 10 seconds down on pace at half distance. And it doesn't sound an awful lot, but I'm concerned.
Yeah, we've seen her right on the records, up or down by just a split point of a second, but suddenly at the 30-minute point, this has really started to hurt.
Well, we're starting to see some laps coming in that are a second over pace. Sarah, because she's got other records to go for, is going to be determined to ride out this hour, and the rest of this race is going to be a horrendous experience, because she's probably pushed out a bit faster than she could do. She wants to finish the hour now, and she's pulled it back into 20-second laps, but I still think she's got a mountain to climb.
Yeah, she's got a tough ask now, but the crowd are starting to get behind her. She's a tremendous competitor. She can, as we've talked before, put herself through a lot of pain, but you just touched on it. There are two other records that if she completes the hour, and of course I don't expect her not to, that Sarah would set the C5 Paralympian record, and also a record for a master for her age group, 36 to 39 age group as well.
Yeah, she will do. I must admit, I'm not 100% sure what the Masters record is. I think it's about 42 or 43 kilometres, so she's comfortably on top of that, and obviously setting the Paralympian record. And it's another target. It's one of the great things about the hour now is that we've got Paralympic hours, we've got Masters hours. It's becoming, a big event, which means something like this is hopefully a more regular thing.
Right, Michael, she's heading up towards 120 lap points, so thanks for your insights, but you feel she's got a bit of a mountain to climb.
I think it's going to be tough from here on in.
Okay, thank you, Michael Hutchinson, for his insight. Let's just remind you then, on the right-hand side of the screen, she's completed 106 laps of the track. 107 laps she's on now. Her splits are coming back inside the 20-second point. She's gone through a little bit of a bad patch. So don't forget, I know you can virtually cheer her on, and she'll probably read everything afterwards. I know Sarah reads all her tweets. We've heard from Kieran Friend, who has given us that little insight as to the bike that she is riding. And right now she is coming up to the next marker, and we expect to see that the marker will show she's outside the record, but she may not be too far outside this record. Joining us again is Rob Hales, world champion on the track. Rob, I saw you as you were waiting to just step back into the seat. Starting to really hurt now for Sarah, isn't it?
It is really hurting. We could see her just grimacing there, and it just shows what a tough record this is. I think there were an awful lot of people who were expecting Sarah to come in and smash the record, obviously bearing in mind the equipment that she's riding now compared to Leontien van Moorsel, but I think we have to recognise the kind of rider that Van Moorsel was. She was one of the greatest women athletes that cycling has ever seen, and the conditions that she rode under as well. These aren't ideal conditions for Sarah Storey, but it's just really starting to just drop away. You could just see it etched across her face there. She started well, it was looking very good, but I think it's just starting to eat into her now. This is a really tough section in the race. She really does have to concentrate. She has to try and stay as close to that record as she can, and then try and roll it out over the last 10-15 minutes, but it is a massive ask.
You know, the centre of the track there, we've got Chris Ferber's got an iPad, it's got some numbers on it. She's not allowed a lot of information, is she? But what is he showing her?
He's basically showing her a lot of the information will be lap splits. Now what she's trying to do, she needed an average of 19.5 lap splits for the record. She's been training at 19.2, 19.3s. She started off at 19.3s, dropping down to 19.2s earlier on, but I think the conditions here are just playing against her, and that was just a little bit too quick, and she's had to back off. So she's been doing 19.7. So basically for every lap she's a couple of tenths seconds slower, 2 or 3 tenths of a second slower. So that obviously ate into the advantage that she had over the first 10 seconds, the first 10 minutes or so of this ride. And she's just off that now, and it really is going to be a tough battle for her to get back on top of that, especially the way that she's looking at the moment. She's certainly not around there cruising in this middle part of the section, just trying to save what she can to really deliver. It really does look like Sarah, she's trying all the way around here.
Yep, she is 45.8 kilometres an hour was the last lap. I interviewed Rowan Dennis a week or so ago, and he said there's a point in the hour record where the bike is pushing you along. It's just flowing. You've trained so hard, the bike is flowing, and then suddenly there's a point at which the bike becomes a battle, and that's what's happening right now.
And it feels like your brakes are on, you're rubbing, you'll be thinking, am I punctured? Quite possibly in both legs, unfortunately. And we can just see there, a little nod of the head there for Sarah. She's looking down. She's just not quite as comfortable as she was, and it's not surprising this far now, 38 minutes into the ride.
118 laps completed. She has 2 laps to go to the all-important 30-kilometre time split, which is coming up soon, and that is 39.00340. She's on lap 119 now. She's going to be outside the time when we come up in a minute. She's got 1 lap to go. So she's going to be outside the record by around about 15 seconds. And now the team are starting to look a little bit concerned in the centre of the track. Barney is looking more concerned than ever. But we're coming up now to the 30-kilometre point, and Dame Sarah Storey is going to be 39.20.289, which I think is going to be around about 20 seconds. 19.949 outside. Can she bring this back or not?
Well, this is the point where she, as we were saying, she needs to stay as close as she can, so she's just within 20 seconds of the record. But to be honest, to turn that around in this stage of the race, it's a big ask, even for someone as great as Dame Sarah Storey is. It's not looking good. It's not without trying to put a damper on it, but she really does have to dig deep. It's not impossible by any stretch of the imagination, but it is going to be one massive uphill task from here on in.
Okay, well, let's see how Sarah does. Rob, I know you've got lots to do in the centre of the track. But thanks very much for joining us this afternoon. Rob Hales, this is a big ask now for Dame Sarah Storey. She is within 19 seconds of the record, but now we can see what the world hour record does to riders on the track when they hit that point of the 30 minutes. Suddenly Sarah went from being right on top of the pace to suddenly the record starts to bite. And she is trying desperately to keep on top of this gear now, keep things turning over. She's done 40 minutes. As Rob said, if she can keep within the 20 seconds, she can try and up it just a little bit more. And maybe Dame Sarah Storey has decided that she can just rattle back a little bit and then try and progress a little bit more before the finish line. It's really, really tough now for Dame Sarah Storey to try and beat this. Chris Ferber's just saying to her, come on Sarah, give it a little bit more. And the big question is, can she respond to what she is being asked to do by Chris Ferber in the centre of the track? Chris has trained her. He's been with her many, many times. He knows what she's capable of, and he won't ask for much more than she can give. So he will just say, come on, have another go. Let's see if he can pull a little bit more out. Let's see if you've got anything more left in those legs as we come up to the lap to complete 128 laps. 41 minutes. She really is on her limit right now. sitting right on the front of the saddle. She's keeping the momentum going on, and she is still around about the 20.2 second laps. As Rob Hale said, she needs to be half a second is what is important. The 19.5 second splits. And we're just hearing that another big win for another British rider today. So I won't ruin it for you because I won't tell you who it was, but Sarah Storey is now trying to just dig in a little bit more. 22nd lap, she's at 45.674 kilometers an hour for that lap 130. Can she just find something in this next 10k? She's in a place that she's never been before. She's an amazing time trialist. She's looking at Chris, she's looking across at him and kind of sticking her tongue out. She knows that this is the battle of her, a black line, the boards, and pain. That is all it is right now. She could, of course, set this Masters hour record, and she will set a Paralympian C5 hour record as well, which other Paralympians will try and go for, I'm sure. But right now the pace is just dropping off a little. Van Moorsel's splits were 46.065 kilometers an hour, and she's just dropping back that little bit more. 134 laps, she's slightly out, but she is still working really hard. I'm going to quickly be joined in the commentary box again by Brian Cookson. Brian, you've been watching this record. This is the point of 45 minutes, the point of no return, and the record is slightly slipping away, but she is now pulling back to inside 20-second splits.
Well, don't ride her off yet, Anthony. I think we've seen Sarah, a real gutsy rider who can drag something out from an unwinnable situation sometimes. So I think there's still a possibility. She's absolutely on the rivet now. She's really going for it. She needs all our support. And this velodrome, they're about to lift the roof off here, I think, Anthony.
They certainly are. This is the point where we find out what an athlete Sarah Storey is. We're at the site of some of her greatest triumphs, and she loves this velodrome. Maybe she's just rattled back a little bit more just to give her legs a little rest and try and come back at the record in the final 15 minutes. And it's so close, isn't it? It's so close to being possible.
Well, 15 minutes to go. She's got to do everything that she possibly can now. She's absolutely no room for weakness now. Everything's got to be on the line.
Well, Brian, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We'll see if she can do it as we now go to the track centre, and we're joined by Magnus Backstedt, winner of the Paris-Roubaix, who is one of Sarah's team down there in the centre of the track to find out what he thinks about this current situation.
I'm with Magnus Backstedt, Director of InfoCrank UK. Magnus, what have you been reading? What values have you got from the bike?
Well, we're looking at Sarah's power numbers and also how efficient she is with her pedal stroke. It's everything that we can measure with the InfoCrank. And she was looking really, really good to start off with. Everything was absolutely perfect, pacing herself well, and unfortunately it looks like she's tailing off a little bit here now.
She is tailing off. Can she come back? We've got just over 10 minutes to go. Can she still do this?
It's a very difficult thing to come back on an hour record, and you know, if anyone can do it, Sarah could, but I think it's going to be very difficult. But you know, we're still keeping our hopes up, and you never know, she might still have that little bit extra left to give.
How important are those numbers going to be to look at afterwards and really evaluate where perhaps things went right or wrong?
I think it's going to be absolutely crucial for anything that she's doing going from here now. To do an hour like this, is the numbers that you can get is absolutely crucial. But I think from our point of view, the build-up to this record attempt has been the most value that we can add to Sarah, and for her to know that her training is accurate, we bang on with the numbers, and she can rely on those numbers as well, and you know, that's crucial to any athlete.
So thank you, Magnus.
Magnus Backstedt in the centre of the track, winner of the Paris-Roubaix, winner of stages of the Tour de France, one of the team who have helped Sarah Storey in this world hour record. 47 minutes completed. She's 30 seconds down now on the splits of Leontien van Moorsel, so it is looking like this is going away. It's disappearing a little bit. The record was set in Mexico in 2003. She may well have just gone off just that little bit too fast, and those 19.2 second splits, I know we're only talking of 0.3 of a second, may well have really hurt the legs of Dame Sarah Storey today. As she said, it's not like any other event. Normally, you look at it, you know that you have to cover 10 miles and you ride 10 miles and you ride it as quick as you can. This one, you don't do that. You have to ride no matter what for 1 hour, and then you have to get to the end of it. And at the end of it, you work out whether you've beaten the record. The chances are right now that Sarah Storey has to pull something enormous out of the bag right now to try and beat this record. She could come back to somewhere very, very close to the mark of Leontien van Moorsel. And as you can see, the time she has spent on the turbo trainer in her pain cave is now starting to be used, because she's right on the front of the saddle. She is churning this gear over. She's completed 147 laps. It's still about half a kilometre down on the schedule of Leontien van Moorsel, who, as we know, was in her time the greatest woman cyclist of her time. And Sarah Storey, you have to admire the fact that she has decided to go for this record. She didn't even have it in her mind that she would try to do it, but she was encouraged to try and inspire other women. That's what Sarah's been about all the time, is about inspiring people to get on bikes. Doesn't matter whether you ride to the shops or whether you ride at an elite level. She wanted to show that it was possible. And Barney there saying that she's really suffering now. 10 minutes to go. 10 minutes to go for Sarah Storey. And the crowd really are on their feet now, trying to encourage her to give something more if she can. Does she have anything left in those legs? It will have taught her an awful lot, and knowing Dame Sarah Storey, if she doesn't make the mark, she will still go away, think about it, work out whether the pain was enough endured, and work out whether she comes back and has another go. This is so impressive so far from Dame Sarah Storey as we come up to 152 laps of this track. She's done 152. Dame Sarah Storey has covered 38 kilometres. We need lifted a little bit more, and that's what this arena's starting to do. They all get on their feet to just urge her on a little bit more, digging everything else she can. 10 minutes to go of this World Hour Record attempt. Thank you to all of you who've joined us on Twitter this afternoon, who've joined us live with this World Hour Record attempt. It's been great to hear from all of you on Twitter, and all your questions and everything. I think, Nick Gale, we managed to explain about the lap board in the centre of the track. And nice to hear from Gerard Vrooman. The lap counter on the right is the number of laps she's completed, and the one on the left is the lap she's currently on. But she's trying to get inside the 20-second mark. She's finding it really tough now to just lift the tempo. But maybe this has inspired some more riders to get on their feet and get on their bikes, and maybe it's inspired some more women to maybe think about the mark and see whether they can beat the time, the distance of Leontien van Moorsel. Van Moorsel rode a bike of 7.1 kilos. She rode 54.15 in the attempt. Sarah Storey is riding a 50.14, a much smaller gear for Dame Sarah Storey this afternoon in this attempt at the World Hour Record. She lifts those knees just a little bit, see if she can get a little bit more speed out. She has 8 minutes of pain to endure. One long session on the turbo trainer for Sarah is what is left. She does lift her hand for the first time off the bars, and she lifts the limbs to try and get a little bit of rest and to wipe her nose as well. It is colder in here in this velodrome than other world record attempts. She asked for it to be 25 degrees. Normally we've seen the attempts at around about 28 degrees, but Sarah asked particularly that she didn't want that sort of temperature to ride in. Riding a special speed suit designed for her that was actually the same design as Rowan Dennis wore in his attempt. The same sponsor they have for their pro teams. Sarah's now 40 seconds down. So it looks like this is starting to fall away as she comes up to the 160 lap point. The tempo was 40 seconds down. So it looks like this world hour record attempt is not going to go the way of Sarah Storey for the overall elite. But remember, as a Paralympian, born, as you can see, without a hand, who has tested elite level, she's fast enough to ride in the Great Britain Team Pursuit squad. She has done. She's ridden at world level there. She's always tested the boundaries. She refuses to be held back by her disability. And right now, she's rocking and rolling a little bit. She's not really let her head drop at all, though, has she? She's carried on going. She knows that the end is in sight. 163 laps completed. The record is 184. Now she's managed to pick it up again. Inside 20 seconds yet again. So she's at 19.9 for that last lap. Can Sarah Storey find a little bit more to push this record? She's going to have all the admiration for Leontien van Moorsel, I'm sure. Leontien was a little bit critical of the record, but I'm sure if Leontien is watching or is keeping an eye, she'll admire the attempt as well, because it truly shows what a stunning athlete Leontien van Moorsel was in her career. 165 laps. This record now is going to be coming up. 5 minutes is approaching towards the end of this record. She's trying to find a little bit more. She looks across the track at that point. I think she wanted to have a little glance at the scoreboard. You're allowed so little information that you'll try and get it from anywhere. On the screens, she's not allowed any more than just the laps, the distance and the time. No other assistance is allowed. You're getting more on the screen than Sarah gets. Here we go then, the last 5 minutes of pain. Remember the hour records of the likes of Chris Boorman and also Jens Vogt, who accelerated in the last 5 minutes. How close can she get to this mark of Leontien van Moorsel? We know she's 40 seconds outside, but can she pull it back at all? She now puts to 19.847 laps. Van Moorsel, in the last few laps of her attempt, did start to slow down. Her last splits started to drop to 19, the equivalent of 19.7, and then she pulled it back again towards the end. Van Moorsel, of course, rode on a 333 metre velodrome. This crowd are going absolutely wild as she picks it up again. She's on lap 171 of 184 needed. 19.8 seconds for Dame Sarah Storey in this London velodrome. 11 gold medals, 8 silver medals, 3 bronze in her time as a Paralympian. She is still managing to lift a little bit more towards the end of this ride. You really have to admire what the amount of pain that this rider is going through, and still managing to summon a little bit more out of that body. Chris Ferber's saying, come on, just go, 4 minutes. She now has a 19.7 lap. She seems like she's found a little bit more morale. I know her little daughter will be so excited. She'll come generally into the velodrome, and because she's been around the velodrome since birth, just a couple of years ago, she'll actually fall asleep in here, even with the amount of noise. But 19.6 now for Sarah Storey. She's starting to get back on tempo. She's finding a little bit more pace at the end of an hour record, when normally your body is in all sorts of trouble, but Sarah now is fighting back. That half an hour to 50 minutes really hurt her, and now she's lapping at 19.771. She's done 174 laps. She's on for about 45.4 kilometres. So we're inside the final 3 minutes. It's a wall of noise as Storey looks across at her coach, Chris Ferber, formerly at British Cycling, as Rob Hale said, now has moved over to British Swimming. They've kind of crossed paths. Sarah Storey, of course, was a British Paralympian in swimming. That's where she started. Everyone's on their feet. There's an awful lot of emotion in this velodrome. She now clocks a 19.4. She's maybe left this surge a little bit too late, but she senses the end is nigh. She's covered 45.451, and she is giving this a Chris Boardman and Jens Vogt finish. She goes to a 19.4. 178 laps of now on the scoreboard, 177 on the scoreboard. She's on to 178. She needs another 6 laps, so I don't think it's going to be possible. For the first time, she uses her right hand, just gets a little bit more relaxation. She is picking this up. Dame Sarah Storey, well, if she doesn't hit the mark, you have to admire the way she's completed this hour record. She's trying everything to try and get there. She's into the final run, the last minute, and she is lifting it again. 59 minutes. She's going to miss this by a slender margin. A slender margin, I think. Sarah Storey with the entire crowd urging her on as she tries to get close to the mark of Leontien van Moorsel. 46.065, 184 laps. Chris Ferber's saying to her, come on, just lift it a little bit more if you can. We are in the final run into the finish. This is going to be very, very close, but I don't think she's going to do it. Sarah Storey has put up a tremendous fight round towards the final run. This is going to be her final lap for Sarah Storey. She's into the final minute countdown as we race now around this final 1 minute of this world hour record attempt. Dame Sarah Storey from Great Britain. It's going to be very, very close, but now she gets the bell with 1 lap of racing to go. She hits the 1 hour right there. They're lifting it a little more. Dame Sarah Storey on the final lap of this hour record. How close is she going to get? As we head up towards the finish now, she crosses the line. The time is up. She'll be so relieved it's over. And now we'll wait for the commissaires, who will be down in the centre of the track as they do the calculation. Everything will be hurting now for Dame Sarah Storey. The crowd wait. The calculation now being done. I think she's done about 177, 178 laps of this record. So I think she's just missed it. But we'll see. And the reason for the screen disappearing in terms of graphics, just to explain to you, is that there have been so many hour records recently, and the graphics have been taken as the record. So we're just going to take the commissaires, will work out how she did. We know that she will set a record as a Paralympian. She has beaten that mark in terms of when the graphics disappeared. She really is unable to stop. Look at that. That was the face of pain of Dame Sarah Storey. She has gone into the unknown, and I don't think she's going to be able to get her feet out of those pedals right now. She has tested her body to the limits of her ability in 1 hour. Dame Sarah Storey, just look at that. You can see how much this has taken out of her. Her arms are shaking. She can hardly even lift her body. She just wants held. That's what the world hour record does to you. It takes everything out. She's being held up now by her team. She truly is spent, absolutely finished. It takes everyone into a place they don't ever want to go. She really is in a world of pain. Wow. She has gone to a place that few riders have ever been. Her body is totally cramped. Whoa, she truly is in a lot of pain. She just wants to sit on the floor and recover. She just has taken herself to the absolute limits of her ability. She really is in a lot of pain. So I think they're just going to try and, it's her back, she's saying, that's in so much pain. She's just cramping up. Well, all of you who've watched this attempt, I'm sure that you'll send Sarah everything in terms of wishes, because seeing a rider take themselves to that point is incredible for an athlete at this level to push themselves that far. They're just trying to cool her down a little bit. And the commissaires now are just working out. The paramedics are with her. Leontien van Moorsel in her attempt was on oxygen for about 10 minutes after the attempt. So the commissaires just deliberating. They have to take the laps and the distance, and they have to just work out what the distance covered is, as Sarah Storey just is attended to by the paramedics on the track there. They just want to make sure she's okay. Her body is racked in pain. An incredible effort in that last 5 kilometers. She went from being outside the record by 40 seconds to suddenly just kicking on and trying to come back. And there we are, as we see Sarah lifted up on the track. I think we have seen a record attempt of just over 45 kilometers, but we're just waiting for that to appear properly on the screen once it's been ratified. She is now recovered just a few minutes later. The record mark of Leontien van Moorsel is 46.065. I think she's going to be within 500 meters of that record, or just inside it. She is starting to come round now, isn't she? There we are, confirmation that Sarah Storey covers 45.502 kilometers. She was 563 meters off the mark of Leontien van Moorsel. She will set a record as a Paralympian, a C5 record. They're putting an ice vest on her just to try and cool her core temperature down. She will set a Masters hour record. She's not far off to that mark of Leontien van Moorsel. She can't stand up right now. And those riders like Jack Bowbridge and Thomas Dekker, who went so close to the marks of their records, they will know how Sarah feels. And I'm sure Matthias Brendler and Jens Vogt will also be able to appreciate just how she feels right now. It is in terms of our records, it is a new British record. As a woman, it will be a C5 Paralympian hour record, and it will be, in terms of masters women, she will be a world record holder at 35 to 39 years of age. She's just missed out on Van Moorsel's attempt. The last thing I think she wants to do is get on her bike, but for the crowd, she is going to go round the track, and she is going to say thank you to everyone who's cheered her on, which is incredible. How is she going to do this? Dame Sarah Storey, 45.502 kilometres in 1 hour. It was an incredible effort, a fantastic performance by the most decorated Paralympian in history. And that big effort towards the end started to pull things back a little bit, but it just wasn't enough. She's starting to smile now. Hopefully we'll get to hear from her. And remember that when you go for the world hour record, as Eddie Merckx said about his record, he never wanted to do it ever again. It destroyed him for a long, long time. She's got a smile back on her face. She's got back on her bike, which is another good thing, because tomorrow morning she probably won't want to. But knowing Sarah, she loves riding a bike. She's cooled down. She's going to be greeted by Brian Cookson. She'll probably say, why did you ever ask me to do that? Why did you put that as an idea out to the outside world? She really is in pieces. Joanna Rousel in the background there. Joanna Rousel, a teammate of Sarah Storey. They now ride on the same professional team of Pearl Izumi Sports Tours. And there is the mark. 45.502 kilometres. So before we hear from Sarah down there in the centre of the track, because I point her out here, let's hear from Joanna Rousel.
I'm here with Joanna Rousel, a GB cyclist and good friend of Sarah's. What was it like to watch that as a friend?
She's such an inspirational rider, Sarah, so I was just so proud to watch her do that today. It's an incredibly brave move to go out and attempt that record. It's not been attempted for many, many years. The current record was 12 years old, and to go out there and be the first person to do that, it's an incredibly brave move, so I was very, very proud of her. But it did look incredibly painful, but I'm so proud of her.
Thank you, Jo.
Jo Rousel. Joanna Rousel then giving us her thoughts, a good friend of Sarah Storey. And the record that she has set, 45.502. 45.502 is the kilometres that she's managed to cover. And well done, Joanna Rousel, for that little interview there in the centre of the track, giving us a little bit of insight as to what it's like standing there as a friend and watching one of your friends go through that amount of pain. So the huddle there in the centre of the track as we hear from Dame Sarah Storey in the arena. An immense amount of interest in this world hour record attempt. Well, we know that riders who have tried to set this record previously or have done include Leontien van Moorsel, the historic riders in world hour record terms, go way back to all the legends of women's cycling, and now with the resurgence of women's cycling, it's fantastic to see Sarah Storey try and take the mark of Leontien van Moorsel this afternoon, but she hasn't quite done it. She's going to try and walk across because I think we're going to get an interview with her. So hopefully now we'll be able to hear from Dame Sarah Storey at the end of this world hour record attempt. She is almost walking. She's just down in front of me in my commentary position. She's shuffling, and we're going to let her sit down, I think, and talk to her. Well, she is clambering into the chair. It's hurt a lot. And here we go as we can now see Sarah down there. And I think Laura's going to be able to give us a little bit of time with Dame Sarah Storey this afternoon. Here she is. So I think we had a little bit of a microphone problem there down in the track centre. So we're waiting now to just have a quick chat to Dame Sarah Storey down there in the centre of the track. Well, I hope you'll all agree it's been a fantastic afternoon, and we have seen an athlete go to the limits of her ability. So here she is in the huddle there in the centre of the track. Hopefully we'll be able to hear from her in just a second. Just a reminder then, 45.502 was the mark she set. And here we are now in the centre of the track with Dame Sarah Storey.
I'm with Dame Sarah Storey after an absolutely astonishing attempt at the hour record. Sarah, how on earth are you feeling?
I look like I've got ants in my pants, but I've got such bad cramp in my legs, in my top of my legs, where you're sort of controlling the bike to try and keep it as low as possible on the track. Yeah, it was definitely the hardest hour of my life. In the first half hour, you're thinking, oh my goodness, I've not even done 30 minutes yet. But no, it was certainly tough.
You missed out on the hour record, but it looks like you've got two other records in the C5 and the Masters. They are actually your 73rd and 74th career world record. How on earth does that make you feel?
It's amazing, actually. I came in here obviously hoping to go further than the 46, but it was just not to be today. But for me, that was definitely the furthest I could possibly have gone in that hour. To be able to break the record that I did, the British record as well, it's just, I'm really, really chuffed. I always said I was going to come here and do my very best, and hopefully that would be, further than anyone else. Unfortunately, it's not as far as Leontien, but she's an absolutely astonishing athlete. So to miss out to her is no bad thing, really.
So Sarah's down there in the centre of the track. There she is. She says Leontien was an incredible athlete, and as you can see in her eyes just how much that has taken out of Dame Sarah Storey this afternoon. So an incredible day here at the Lee Valley VeloPark, the London Velodrome, the site of the London 2012 Olympic Games. Dame Sarah Storey sets a mark of 45.502 kilometres, which is just short of the record of Leontien van Moorsel of 46.065, but she sets a British record, a C5 Paralympian record in the process. Thank you to all of you for joining us here for this live coverage of the UCI Hour Record of Dame Sarah Storey. Bye for now.